Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. Hope everybody had a great weekend. We do have some Eagles football tonight. Go Birds. But the conversation for the PlayStation 5 Pro continues to baffle people. We actually got some new details over the weekend thanks to Digital Foundry, and some of the specifics are really shocking people. Some of this might come off as a little unexpected for an $800 console, and that's really one of the main issues for the PlayStation 5 so far. Sony's up against more scrutiny than ever before because that price tag says, hey, this is a premium product. And I think so far they've done a very, very poor job at actually justifying that price. That initial presentation was a travesty. I don't think there's any other way to say it. But we'll go over some of the newest details, and while I do think that there are some surprises here, there's also some positive takeaways as well. So we're going to get into all of that today, but let's just go and jump right into things, starting off with Astro Bot. Once again, I think most of us kind of know by this point that Astro Bot is a great game. I mean, there's been this really weird conversation around its inspirations, which is just bizarre to me. I swear some people just kind of prefer to be miserable in life. But I think for the most part, fans are really enjoying Astro Bot. But the big question still remains. You know, this is a $60 3D platformer in the year of 2024. Can games like this still have success on PlayStation specifically? I mean, we know that Nintendo can have success with these type of games, but what about Sony? You know, their fan base is a lot different. They tend to enjoy more gritty games, I'll kind of say. But the good news here is that Astro Bot is starting off fairly strong. Last week, Christopher Dring revealed that it had a solid start over in the UK. It was the number 2 best-selling game there, only behind Space Marine 2. And now, Matt Piscatella from Circana is echoing that sentiment in the United States, where it's also number 2 for the week. You can see here where he said, don't usually talk weeklies, but wanted to add some context to the UK reporting from last week. Across both physical and digital, Astro Bot ranked 2nd in unit sales in the United States for week ending September 7th, behind only NBA 2K25. And the Astro Bot DualSense was the week's best-selling accessory. Solid week 1. And this is what we keep hearing. It's simply solid. Not necessarily amazing, but just simply solid, which I don't think is overly surprising. Christopher Dring last week explained that non-Nintendo 3D platformers trends more towards being slow but steady sellers. So if that trend continues with Astro Bot, then it'll be a game that kind of reaches higher sales numbers over time. But it's certainly not going to get those type of numbers as fast as some of Sony's bigger IP like Spider-Man and God of War. You know, that's not the expectation when it comes to Astro Bot. And I will say that it sounds like Astro Bot is tracking similar to Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. That is a much better comparison. And, you know, at least over in the UK, it seems to be tracking similar to that game. And, you know, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart sold 4 million copies. So I'd say based on the things that we've heard this past week, seems like everything has gotten off to a good start. And now we'll just have to kind of keep an eye on Astro Bot over the holiday season and see how it does. Especially considering there's not really as many big-time games planned for this year's holiday period as we've seen these past couple of years. Now, I also want to go and touch up on something that we talked about last week, and that's the return of Flappy Bird. When we talked about this last week, reports indicated that this game was acquired by Flappy Bird fans, and that they had ambitions to expand on the original experience that we saw 10 years ago. You know, this was an incredibly popular game back then. So at first, all of this sounded exciting for fans that enjoyed that original game. And again, there were a lot of them. But however, as more news has come out, there's been a lot more skepticism as to why it's returning in the first place. That's because the original creator posted this. No, I have no relation with their game. I did not sell anything. I also don't support crypto. So after reading that, you know, the first thing that kind of comes to mind here is that if he didn't sell Flappy Bird, what exactly happened? And apparently what happened here was that the trademark was considered abandoned, and that basically allowed this new group to swoop in and to take over the IP. So this is not the type of acquisition where everybody just shook hands and agreed for a better future for Flappy Bird and its fans. In fact, as more information was uncovered, fans discovered that this new group that now owns Flappy Bird has been involved with crypto projects in the past. And that immediately raises some red flags. So now the general wonderment is just, how authentic is this new group actually being? This definitely comes off as very opportunistic given Flappy Bird's past. And considering their involvement with crypto, the concern really starts to pile up as to whether or not there's any kind of scam involved. So I'd say at the very least here, it's something to be aware of. Now, just speaking for myself, I have zero interest in Flappy Bird. I didn't really care for the original game, nor do I care about this game. So I'll say it right now. I have zero intention to play the new Flappy Bird game, but just kind of given its popularity, I do feel the need to at least let you all know what's going on. That way you can make your own informed decision. All right, so let's go talk about the PlayStation 5 Pro. The conversation around this thing, by this point, is just wild. I almost feel like it's gotten so bad that it's hard to have a real conversation about the PS5 Pro because a large portion of people simply hates it. And I can't really blame them. You know, Sony did such a terrible job at showcasing the PS5 Pro. Like, why are we showcasing old games for an $800 console that already looks good on the base PS5? I don't know what's happening over at Sony, but they have lost all touch with their fan base. Like, I honestly feel like the PS5 Pro reveal is among the worst first looks for a new console ever. I mean, we can debate about the Xbox One and the TV reveal. That was bad as well. But I think the PS5 Pro ranks pretty high up there among the worst console reveals ever. That's just kind of how I feel about this thing. At the same time, though, I do feel like once we get a little closer to its launch, and once people start to get it in their own hands, there will be more positive reactions then. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the price will be justified. That $800 price tag is going to be hard to swallow no matter how you look at it. But for right now, what I want to do today is I want to talk about Digital Foundry and the massive video that they've just posted today about the PS5 Pro and their findings from that presentation. Now, that is something that I need to emphasize, though. This is not a hands-on look from Digital Foundry. They're really just working with what they have, which is still very little. Which that takes me back to my first point. The PS5 Pro presentation was simply awful. There's no way around that. But nonetheless, Digital Foundry did a great job at breaking things down as they usually do, and there is some good news here. But I'd also say that some of it's a little bit shocking at first glance. So let's just kind of go and start there. One of the most shocking results that they found is that Alan Wake 2 and Assassin's Creed Shadows were running at sub 1080p. Yes, their internal resolution for the performance option appears to be 864p, and then they use PSSR to upscale them. Now, when people attach 864p to an $800 console, I think you can kind of guess as to what kind of response they got. It's not been great. But I do think that it's important to understand that is kind of the point of the PlayStation 5 Pro. And this is something that we're going to hear a lot about in the future for the Switch successor as well, and maybe even with the Xbox. These AI upscaling methods, which are only going to get more popular next generation, are meant to take advantage of lower resolutions and to make them appear to be as something like 4K. So more or less, the end result isn't so much about the internal resolution itself, but it's more about the image quality combined with performance. And on that end, Digital Foundry was impressed in the sense that PSSR is doing a much better job than AMD's FSR, and that was the entire goal. However, it's still not as transformative as something like NVIDIA DLSS. But the hope here is that PSSR is still in its infancy stage, and the Sony will continue to update it for the PS5 Pro as the generation continues. And then we'll see a major upgrade for the eventual PlayStation 6. Now, in that sense, you can kind of argue that the PS5 Pro is a beta test for PSSR, but I will say it does sound like it's gotten off to a fairly strong start. In fact, another shocking result here is that Dragon's Dogma 2, this game has been a big problem on consoles, but it does appear to be running at 60 FPS with PSSR. Again, it's probably at a lower internal resolution, but as long as the image quality is comparative to a higher native resolution, then that's pretty impressive. The goal is really for it to be the best of both worlds. It'll have good image quality with good 60 FPS performance. Now, does that mean that it's suddenly worth $800? That's really going to kind of depend on the person, but I'd say no for most people. Even though that it will be good for certain games. Sounds like Dragon's Dogma 2 could receive a pretty significant increase, but that price tag is still, I don't know, it's just such a huge jump for a mid-generation refresh. We're not talking about a generational leap. This is expected to be something minor, but with such a significant price increase, it really is just a tough pill to swallow. Let me know what you all think about this news, though. Are you impressed by some of the early results or not, considering it's more than premium price tag? Now, one last thing that I want to talk about here, though, before we go, is Nintendo's holiday plans. There's been a lot of discussion about a September hardware reveal from them, and lo and behold, they just announced a new OLED bundle. Welcome in the Mario Kart 8 Switch OLED bundle. This will include the Nintendo Switch OLED, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and 12 months of Nintendo Switch Online. Not the expansion pack version, just the regular old Nintendo Switch Online. And okay, this isn't a bad bundle per se. It's just very unexciting, given the context. It's basically the same bundle that they do every single year, but with the addition of Switch Online. I guess it's not broke, don't fix it type of strategy. It is what it is, but I mean, we all kind of know the Switch successor is around the corner. It could release as early 2025. So this is more than likely the last holiday for the Switch as Nintendo's flagship console. Now, I mean, I'm sure they'll continue to sell the original Switch next year, but what I think I would have preferred to see from Nintendo this holiday is an official price drop. I mean, this is a 7-year-old console. You would think that a price drop is possible by this point, but it appears they are dead set on riding this wave at its current price tag until the very end. And I think this does make me question the price for the next Switch. I mean, we've been talking about those crazy high prices for the PlayStation 5 Pro, but the Switch successor, I mean, it might be priced higher than previous Nintendo consoles. I mean, I'm hoping that it'll be no more than $400, but could it actually be higher than that? I don't know anymore. I thought the PS5 Pro was going to be like $600. I was clearly wrong about that. But let me know what you all think. What do you think the price will be for the Switch successor? Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. Do make sure to hit that subscribe button if you like this type of content. I will be back tomorrow. And until then, peace out.